Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Paranormal and Unexplained. I'm your host, Nick, my co host, Jason,
What's going on, everybody?
and this week we are going to be discussing different monster sightings, which is Jason's topic, so I will hand it over to him.
All right, yeah. So tonight I got a little bit of three different stories. They'll be short for the most part, but it will all of them will add up to a pretty good episode. Right now, I'm going to kick it off with the Moorbach Monster. Right now, I'm typing in the exact location for this Air Force base so I don't get the wrong thing. Because I was looking through my notes, and it was the one detail I left out was where this place was. So
That's all right.
okay, all right, it's in Moorbach, Germany, and it's an U.S. Air Force base off of there, out of close to Moorbach in Germany.
Okay.
So the legend of the Moorbach monster goes back to no exact date because the origin of the Morbot monster is kind of just more myth than anything, but it divvies into around the 1810s, and there was a man by the name of Thomas Jonas Baptist Switzer. He was ex-military. He was actually served in Napoleon's army and had come to Germany to relax and retire after being part of Napoleon's army, and they were, you know, pretty much defeated. And so they kind of, his army had to scatter across the world pretty much. So Thomas ended up in Moorbach, Germany. So Switzer kind of had like a rough life after that point. He was dealing with gangs, violence, those kind of things. And he came upon uh, a farm where he had come in and was uh, going to rob them, and they had woken up in the night and caught him. And instead of like turning and running, he murdered the male farmer and his son. The wife standing there looking over both her murdered husband and son began chanting words and hereby cursed him. And she said, "From now on, at each full moon, you will change into the person you really are, a rabid wolf." And from that moment on, the next full moon came, and he transformed into what they believed as the first werewolf. And he even tried, it says, according to the myth, he even tried to get out of the curse by returning in wolf form and murdering the woman and crushing her skull, thinking that this would reverse the curse.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it failed. He remained the Morbach monster. And it goes on to say that, he, at one point, there was actually a cult following behind him where they had thought he was a god and followed him, and pretty much he ended up turning and eating his own disciples and then becoming this rabid animal that just lived out in the woods. And it went on for a few hundred years like that and just being eerie stories. But apparently, Thomas would find out that he would never die, though, either. He would be immortal as long as he was transforming.
Right.
So, but later on, give it about 300 years, we'll get into what's going on here recently, because there are a bunch of old myths and stuff about, like vandalizing some bandit camps and stuff like that. Just villagers reporting seeing, a giant wolf eating their cow,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that, which I have theories to why they're seeing these things. I'm not saying people are crazy, but I have my own theories, but I'll
Right.
get into that later.
Okay.
But Thomas would go on to live for hundreds of years, and supposedly he's still around today. Now he's not quite as violent as he used to be, apparently, because the murders don't happen like they used to. And the theory is with that, the longer that he is the werewolf, the more control he's learning to have over it.
Okay.
So, where he was originally in the first 100 years of his life was just uncontrolled rage killing. He couldn't control it really.
Right. It was just
But yeah, and then over the course now, he's actually gotten some control where he's just not a mindless thinking killing monster.
right. He's starting to
But
get more of his humanity back, basically.
yes, yes, exactly. But that's pretty much the origin story to the Marbach monster. Now I'm going to get into some of the sightings that we have, and where a lot of these gain credit for is the fact that they happen on the Morbach Air Force Base multiple times with multiple government documentation talking about how this happened. Now, there's nothing like that was ever sent up the chains, like it became like a huge deal where they sent out hunting parties or nothing for this
Mm-hmm.
because nobody was ever officially killed or injured by this thing. But it was multiple sightings that they had. But one of them goes along as on one summer night in 1988, a group of Air Force personnel were returning to the Moorbach Air Force Base munitions depot, and they just passed a shrine as they were coming back. They noticed that as they were driving by, that uh, the back end of their truck, they were looking out of the back canopy,
Mm-hmm.
and they could see the shrine where the candles were lit. And they saw a shadowy figure run past the candles so quickly that the candles went out. And they said that they could see it starting to gain pace with the truck.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of like mocked it, mocked like the sighting of it and all that as like, superstitions from the locals that they'd been just hanging around the locals too long.
Right.
Some other people started, jesting the newer guys, being like, "Wait till you have to go on patrol tonight, and you're stuck with the werewolf,"
Right.
things like that. But
Just
later
getting
that
them riled up.
evening, the what's that?
Just getting them riled up. That's all.
Oh yeah, hazing the new guys.
Right. Right.
But later that evening, the base sirens like went off,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like all they knew is that people were running around, shots were being fired, and nobody was injured, but they followed the gun tracing, the gunfire, and when they came upon the guard, he said he saw something. He doesn't know what it was, but it was huge,
Right.
and he said it ran that way. So with that guard, they took off to investigate what they saw. Now, what they came across is the reason the sirens were going off was that this thing first triggered a perimeter sensor, and then that guard investigated that sensor, opened fire on whatever he saw, and it ran off this way, and so they went to go see what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after they come around the corner, multiple guards, at least 7, it says, that were in this team, said that when they came around the corner, they saw a large wolf like creature standing on its hind legs. The guard said it held its gaze for a moment before running off, effortlessly leaping over the 9-meter tall building to its roof and hopping over the roof over the fence.
Oh wow.
And more personnel would be called in later the next day, and even multiple personnel said once upon going onto the roof, because it was graveled on the top of the roof,
Mm-hmm.
that there were multiple giant wolf prints on top of the roof.
Huh.
Now, these sightings would go on for multiple things. Another one was that one night a man is on patrol, and he had just started warming up his MRE, And he, while his MRE warmed up, he thought he would take his patrol one more time around. When he came back around, the food would be ready, and
Yeah.
he would eat. As he started making his patrol, he probably got about 60 yards away from where he was making his food, and all of a sudden, perimeter sensors went off again to the area that he was just at. So he ran back over there to see what it was, and he said he saw the what it looked like to be a giant wolf running off into the woodlines. And when he approached where he was, his MRE was torn apart.
Okay.
And that's his thing. Now, there are some other stories of people, villagers, saying that people were eaten and other things, but this has all been chopped up to folklore and superstition through the locals because even though they say people have been killed, besides a few hunting accidents that I looked up and stuff like that, there are nothing that I've seen in Moorbach where it's like wolf hunting
Yeah.
people stuff.
Yeah.
So as far as I could tell on that, that was just mainly folklore
Mm-hmm.
between that. But what was happening on this base, though, is not folklore. There, something was going on. If it had an entire base in arms,
Right.
ready to fight something, and then multiple soldiers watched this creature go on top of the roof of a building
Mm-hmm.
and then jump over the fence to take off, this thing was huge.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt that there was a creature there. It's just, is it a werewolf named Thomas, or is it something else? That's the theory here. So, what do you think?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, from what you said before, it could have been like just them probably hazing the new soldiers. But
Yeah, just
as
a story they come up with.
yeah, just to get like the new soldiers all, weirded out and stuff like that,
Right,
just like
right,
normal
right.
hazing.
Uh-huh.
Like that's the only thing I can really think of because most of this is obviously lore and just old tales from the city itself.
Yeah, yeah. Now, see, my theory is that it's both a little right and a little wrong.
Hmm.
Is that I believe that they're seeing something now. I don't believe it's Thomas Switzer or whatever his name
No,
last name is.
no, I don't think because if, in all honesty, if there was somebody that was living for a couple hundred years, I mean, everybody would know about
Oh,
that.
exactly. You know, and it's
That's
one
a
of those
little
things like
much.
it's why kind of like you dispel Dracula so easily
Yeah.
because of the fact that if there was this guy that was living for eternity and killing people,
Hmm.
for one, it'd be kind of obvious that there's this dude that just for some reason has been around for 100 years living in the same house
Yeah.
and people don't think that's weird
Yeah.
and then girls start going missing, blood drained. Yeah, it'd be kind of obvious.
Yeah. Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly.
So, and I think the fact of a werewolf existing would be pretty obvious as well.
Hmm.
But here's where I go on to the point that where it could exist, it's just not what they say it is. Now, I was looking in zoology reports
Uh.
of animals that existed in that area.
Okay.
Now, up to till about 30 or 40 years ago, dire wolves used to run in that area. They were actually had one of the largest packs of any known dire wolf species in Germany around Moorbach.
Okay.
So, and a dire wolf could grow anywhere from, they said, like a small runt would be about 4 feet tall on all four legs. A full grown dire wolf could sometimes, like on all four legs, be the size of a full grown man.
Oh wow.
They were
So
huge.
yeah, I can see that being like the
Like a dire wolf has been known to bring down bears and mooses and other large animals by itself.
hmm.
So there weren't something to play around with.
Well, right. I mean, something that's basically the size of a full-grown man. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not something I would really want to mess around with either. You know.
So my theory is that they do say that the dire wolf is extinct,
Hmm.
but a lot of people are extinct in that area. I don't know as far as worldwide if they're extinct,
Right.
but as far as in that area they are,
Mm-hmm.
they were hunted out of population. But the thing is that we always see people all the time say this is extinct, and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
20, 30 years down the road, boom, there's one right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's my theory, is that if they saw something that night that set off predator sensors and all that, and if a dire wolf was to stand up on its hind legs, yeah, it could easily be 7, 8 feet tall.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I don't see that being too hard of a jump to jump on top of a building once you're that tall, and with the agility of a wolf.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's something I can see plausible.
Oh yeah, like without a
But
doubt.
as far as Thomas Switzer going down and going, there's those damn Air Force people, and then looking at the moon and transforming and going to still as MRE, I just don't see
No,
that
no,
being it.
no. I really don't see that being. I don't see that being the case at all. Like direwolf, yeah, I can see a direwolf doing that, but not somebody that is stricken with
Yes.
lycanthropy doing that.
Yeah, this is, because there was other reports that they went into to say that campfires had been raided,
Mm-hmm.
and like campsites and stuff while people were gone or asleep,
Yeah,
and people reporting, looking through their tents and seeing a big ass wolf.
yeah.
And, it always went back to, oh, it's the Thomas Witcher, the Murdoch monster. And then, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how I would feel if I just walked. I know it would take me in shock that if I was a soldier and I came around the corner and I saw a wolf that was that big.
Well, anybody. You don't even have to be a soldier. Just anybody coming around a corner seeing a wolf that's practically staring you eye to eye. You practically like crap yourself. To be honest.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what makes the Twilight books so unreasonable. Like, some girl's just going to see a giant wolf and be like, Jacob, my friend. And you're like, yeah, okay. But so yeah, that is the tale of the Morbot monster.
Okay, what else you got for us?
All right, let me close the Morbach off now.
Okay.
All right, and I just fucked up because I closed the Mothman.
Uh,
All right, we'll go back. I'll bring it back up. I know where it is in the files.
okay.
Um. All right, this one, it's quite crazy, but it's real too. This one is called the Manananggal.
I think that's how it is.
It's for people that don't know what a manananggal is. It's the Philippines word for this creature. As the best way I can describe it to you, it's a bat about 8 or 9 feet in length.
Mm-hmm.
It's a giant fucking bat. And the manananggal was believed to be back, and it's an old Filipino superstition that there was a demon or creature that lived in the forest that would hunt and stalk children, and that it had the upper body of a human with a head with horns on it, and somehow this like body just protruded out of the body of a bat.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like this torso riding the body of a bat, pretty much, is how the drawing is the best way I can describe it. It's ridiculous looking.
Yeah, like the pictures I have basically on here is like crazy.
Yeah,
So
it's ridiculous looking, and
yeah.
you can see why people never took these people seriously about these drawings and stuff. But you got to remember that the people that were seeing this weren't like people inside the cities of the Philippines. These were people that were indigenous tribes of the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
They were the ones that lived out in the like jungles of Central and South America,
Yeah.
kind of those kind of areas.
Yeah.
Mexico, Peru, Costa Rica. These
Aboriginal.
are all, yeah, these are all countries that this thing was reported in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it would go on to later that these people would go on for hundreds of years saying that the Manananggal was taking their children and attacking them periodically throughout their time of living in these settlements. And children would be actually taken and found in the woods, drained of blood. Sometimes parts of their flesh and other things would be eaten off of them.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes half-eaten corpses are found of children, but mainly it was more of like goats, pigs, farm animals, and stuff that would go missing.
Mm-hmm.
But they would later get it, the attacks would later increase significantly, and this probably happened. Uh, Let me see if I got the date written down. Uh, no, it doesn't. It didn't. I don't think it ever gave me an exact date.
Mm-hmm.
But the people, this tribe would go on later to call the Filipino army for help, and they would pay the army to come out and help them.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of weeks into the army being there, an attack occurred, and the army shot and killed the thing, and they hung it up. I sent you got that picture I sent you, didn't you?
Yeah, that's circulating through.
Yeah, that picture of that giant bat they're hanging was what the Filipino army shot and killed, and that would be later to be described by the people of the village and everything else as the Maningao.
Mm.
So these people weren't crazy. They were being attacked by something, but they were letting their
Imagination.
superstitions and imaginations
Yeah.
get the better of them, and that's why people didn't believe them for so long.
Right.
But then the legend of the Maningao gets even crazier. This is something I haven't said to you because I wanted this to be a surprise for you. The Maningao is actually believed by the Filipino, Peru, Mexico, and all those areas that have these bats
Mm-hmm.
because these will later become to be known after zoologists looked at it and stuff.
Yeah.
The actual real name for these bats is the giant golden crowned flying fox bat.
Okay.
And the also has the same family of bats that live also in Peru. They just go by the giant bat of Peru.
Okay.
But those are the actual real names of them. Now, the Maningao is the name the Filipino people gave it.
Mm-hmm.
And according to their superstitions, the Maningao is a pet to another supernatural force. You want to take a wild guess on what that force is?
Mm. Vampires?
Nope.
Nope.
Good guess, though.
No, thank you.
But no, they would have a codependency relationship and often be protected as if they were pets by the chupacabras.
Oh my god.
The chupacabras would use these animals to scout out and find, prey and stuff. And if the Maningals couldn't carry the prey back themselves, then the chupacabras would go and kill the thing. And this is why they believed that the kids would be found with their blood drained because they were taking these kids to the chupacabras.
So this is like a joint military branch.
It's a paranormal uh, co-joint operation between the chupacabras and the Maningals.
So basically, you have an air attack, you have air support, and then you have a land-based attack.
Hey,
So the air.
it worked on tremors.
So if the air support
Remember,
can't take him
remember they
out.
had the ass blasters. And if you don't believe me, that was actually their name. Go look it up in the movie. Their name is called the ass blaster.
So if the air support doesn't do it, then the chupacabra, which is your land base,
Yes,
just comes running in, and just finishes the job.
yes. Now, the history to the mystery of the blood sucking monster known as the chupacabra is that if you don't know, is what is called in the Spanish name chupacabra means goat sucker. It's an animal said to be known is unknown to science and systematically killing animals in various places all across the world, even attacking humans at some point.
Mm-hmm.
The chupacabra is believed to be about the size of a Great Dane, maybe a little larger. Sometimes they're smaller and can be confused by coyotes at times. But the one picture that I got when that popped up when I looked at the chupacabra that I was just like, this is fucking ridiculous. Is it's a animated picture. I meant to send it to you, but I forgot to. But
Mm-hmm.
it's an animated picture of what looks like this saber-toothed tiger-like thing
What's
that has like spine, like I don't know how to like talon-like spines coming out of it,
okay? Like
and
spikes.
two giant fangs like a saber-toothed tiger, and it's just shoving it in this goat's fucking throat, and this goat's just looking at you like, what the fuck? And that is the animated picture of the chupacabra.
Oh God.
So basically, a giant dog-like saber-toothed tiger with like
Spikes coming
shit
out of its
come
back.
spikes coming out of his back. So yeah. Um, Let me see if I could share this with you. Oh no, I'm not connected on Facebook on here. Okay. So that, my friends, is the story of the Manangal. It's nothing crazy or thing, but I wanted to add this one in there just to show that sometimes these ridiculous stories can have some truth behind them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just like they found out, even those people were fucking stupid to think it was like a half human thing riding a bat thing and that it was working with chupacabras. They weren't wrong that there was a giant monster hunting them,
mm-hmm.
but just come find out it was a bat.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not a.
So,
It wasn't a human bat hybrid or anything like that. It was
yeah,
just a giant bat.
yeah. So, okay. Now on to the creme de la creme for tonight. The one of the granddaddies of all monster myths, the Mothman. Yeah, I'm pulling it up now. Okay, I got it up. Good. This is why you make notes and do research. So you just pull shit up.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, most of everybody knows kind of the backstory to the Mothman, and and it's it's one of those very well known legends.
Yeah.
There's never been any like certainty proof. Really, no photography. I mean, there's sometimes you get a blurry picture that has two little red things in it, and they're like, "Those are the eyes."
Mm-hmm.
But that takes a little. You might as well call it the man and gal because it's just that blurry of a picture.
mm-hmm.
But as far as the history for the Mothman, goes back all the way to November 12th of 1966. There were five men in a graveyard digging a grave in the cemetery of Clendon, West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
At the time that they were digging, they heard rustling in the trees. They would turn to look, and they said that they seen a man-like figure fly low from the trees over their heads, and then just be gone. And that would be known as the very first sighting of the Mothman.
Okay.
Now, few a little bit of time would go by. Actually, I think it's about 3 days went by. So yeah, about November 15th of 1966, uh, two young couples were actually, being young couples, and they
Mm-hmm.
went to what was called the Point Pleasant, which was, if anybody, everybody has your own hometown makeout spot.
Mm-hmm.
This was their hometown makeout spot. Now, the people that were there names were Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Malinette. Uh, they told the police after they came into the police station, frantic and afraid, that a large gray creature whose eyes glowed red when the car's lights picked him up, and they described it as a large flying man with 10-foot wings following the car while they were driving in an area outside of the town.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think that area was known as the TNT area,
Okay.
and it was a former World War II munitions plant,
Okay.
and that's why it got the name the TNT area.
Yeah.
But they said that they were flying outside that, and they said that as they were driving, they looked in the rear view mirror. The driver did,
Mm-hmm.
and didn't see anything. But he said he had this feeling that he was being watched, and he continued to drive. And then out of nowhere, the lady in the back seat named Mary started screaming and saying, "It's eyes, it's eyes." And he looked in the mirror again, and that's when he saw the man like creature flying about 10 feet behind his car, maybe a couple of feet above the car at that point,
Mm-hmm.
and said that he could definitely see it plainly, and it was a man like figure with about a 10-foot wingspan that had red glowing eyes. And no matter how hard he put on the gas, this thing kept up with him step for step.
Oh wow.
And then after when they could see the town's lights coming into view, that's when it broke off and left.
Huh.
So, but during the next few days, a lot of people would start reporting that they were seeing the Mothman. Two volunteer firemen said that they saw a large bird with red eyes while helping a car crash. Most of these things that people would see these things either revolved around death or the weapons of death,
Okay. So
which hereby, the cemetery, the TNT area,
right.
the car crash. It was always scenes of an accident or places that were weapons of destruction.
Right.
Wherever this thing goes, usually destruction and death isn't far behind it. It's like it's drawn to it.
Yeah. It's more. It's like it seemed like it was basically creating tragic events or something like that.
Yes, yes, and that would go into be later here in a minute. We'll get into that where people think this thing orchestrates it.
Okay.
But after that, where the two volunteer firemen saw the large bird with red eyes, a Mason County sheriff named George Johnson commented, and he said that he believed the sightings were due to an unusually large uh, Huron themed a shit poke.
A
I
what?
don't I'm not exactly sure what the fuck that is. But
I
I wrote it down word for word because that was his excuse for it.
okay.
And I was hoping that maybe you would know what shitpoke is.
No, I never even heard of that. So that's new to me.
Okay. Well, I will look that up here in just a second then and tell people, but let me get through this real quick. Okay, and then the contractor Newell Partridge told Johnson that when he aimed a flashlight at the creature in a nearby field,
Mm.
its eyes glowed like the reflectors on bicycles. And he said that and blamed the buzzing noises from the television set and the disappearance of his German Shepherd on this creature.
Oh wow.
So a lot of things happened with this one guy, and he would tell the sheriffs that all these things that were happening, from the reflection of its eyes, dog, and all that, was all due to this one creature. Now, Johnson would go on to claim to receive 377 phone calls within a 6 month period relating to the Mothman, which Johnson describes as one idiot walks into a town and yells fire. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, 30 people are going to scream fire.
Right.
So Johnson would go on to believe that he would say a lot of the reportings and the sightings that he believed were man manufactured.
Right.
So, but then something would happen about a year later that would change everything for Johnson. On December 15th of 1967, the bridge called the Silver Bridge would collapse. It would kill 46 people, and this incident would give rise to the legend and the full on fear that would go along with it to the Mothman. The reason this gives fear and it goes back to the Mothman was moments before the bridge collapsed, many survivors say that they saw red, full glowing eyes and a flying man like figure
Mm-hmm.
flying around that bridge. Now, something to go into and mention about this is that they believe that the Mothman, some some theories go on to believe that the Mothman may be an interdimensional being, an alien, or just for an animal of nature to have a really high intelligence. And
Mm-hmm.
some people would even see a clairvoyance because for some reason, people throughout the town would receive phone calls. 90% of the time, it was just heavy breathing, sometimes a screeching sound, just interference coming through the phone.
Right.
But on four occasions, people said that something spoke, and it would usually give out a location or a name of somebody or something like that. For one instance, a phone call came in to a reporter of the town, and this is what inspired the movie that would come called The Mothman Prophecies. And Richard Gere would go on to portray in this movie as their own version of this reporter.
Right. Right.
But there was a reporter that actually lived in that city in West Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
and he received a call. From what he said, that it spoke English, it punctuated itself, and it was very brief and to the point of its conversation. But there was something about the creature's voice that, in his head, he knew wasn't a human speaking.
Right.
And that's what gave him the eerie feeling of it. But that creature would come in and speak to this journalist and say, December 15th, 46 shall die. And that was all it said.
Mm-hmm.
Well, nobody knew what that meant besides 46 people will die on December 15th.
Right.
Well, he went on to believe that after the day was rolling through and nothing happened, that nothing would come of this. But sure enough, later that night, around 8 o'clock at night, the silver the silver bridge would collapse, and due to infrastructure failing and overload bearing of multiple cars stuck in a traffic jam on the bridge, the bridge's structure failed, the tension lines broke, and the bridge collapsed. And among that, so many people were crushed to death in debris, but most of them drowned in the river below, stuck in their vehicles, unable to get out with debris falling on them.
Mm-hmm.
And after the bridges were pulled out of the water, the river was dragged. The grand total of 46 people were found dead, and that has been something uh, that the author of the story and the reporter both say in common, that is too eerie of a coincidence to be overlooked and ignored. That phone call would come in of an unworldly voice saying December 15th, 46 people will die,
Right.
and then it happened. Now, the Mothman would go on to make other predictions. One is believed to be famously made famous by the Mothman Prophecies movie, where the Mothman supposedly predicts a aircraft crashing, and it did crash.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people would go on to believe that the Mothman was just a creature, but some like to think that he actually has an identity, and that identity is one that you would know of called Ingrid Cold.
Yes.
Now, Ingrid Cold is very well known in the paranormal universe. He's gone anywhere from UFOs to great tragedies that's happened in the world and everything else. And Ingrid Cold is known to be a mysterious caller that will call random people at random times, usually with a grave warning. And he doesn't always say his name. It just so happened that one instance, when somebody asked him, "Who is this?"
Mm-hmm.
his response was Ingrid Cold.
Right.
And what the people with the Mothman that experienced these phone calls, later these people would talk, share notes, and the one conclusion that came back was when they described the voice of Ingrid Cold and the voice that journalist got that day of the bridge,
Mm-hmm.
they say the voice is identical to what each other describes.
Huh.
So, but in 2016, the WCHS TV published a photo purported to be the Mothman taken by an anonymous man while driving on Route 2. The science writer Sharon A. Hill proposed that the photos showed that it was a bird, perhaps an owl, carrying a frog or a snake in its mouth. And that would be the first, they said, photo taken of real good picture of Mothman, only for a few days later to be horribly shot down by a zoologist.
Yeah.
And that, my friends, is the short, gist version of the Mothman.
Oh.
So, what should take? Mothman real? Fake? Giant hoax portrayed by many people?
Well, if it's a hoax portrayed by many people, they did a very good job of it, like decimating a bridge. And so, I don't think it's a hoax. I think something happened. I just don't think we really know what it is.
Mm, I I agree. I don't think there's a giant moth thing flying around. I really don't.
No.
I think just like that zoologist said that people are looking at things and putting things together that just shouldn't go together and coming up with these crazy conclusions.
The only reason why I think they call it the Mothman is because that's what it looks like to them. That's the best
Yeah.
way they can describe it.
Well,
But
then one person yells Mothman, and that's what everybody sees in their head when they see something too.
exactly, exactly. It's basically, collective group of people all calling it the same thing. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Exactly.
But
But the one thing though that does give it to the realm that you can't ignore the paranormal side of it. It isn't the Mothman itself to me.
mhm.
It's the phone. It's the phone calls.
Well, it's not even so much that; it's just everything else that happened with it. I mean, the phone calls are one thing; it's one major thing.
Well, I mean, you can dismiss the like Mary and all them seeing the thing chasing them down the road. You
Right,
could dismiss a lot of the encounters that people say they see with this thing.
right,
The one things you can't dismiss is that there's this unearthly voice calling and actually predicting the future.
right, right.
That is where I don't believe in fortune tellers, but that I don't. I mean, if what they're saying is true, and this isn't some elaborate hoax made up by this journalist and other people to get their 15 minutes of fame,
Mm-hmm.
then this is undoubtedly, if it's real, fucking one of the craziest things I've ever heard of. Because
Oh yeah,
not only is it predicting the future, it's predicting the exact deaths, like how many are going to die. Like the plane, it said
yeah,
300 and something would die,
right,
and every passenger on the plane died.
right,
46 would die on the bridge, and sure enough, 46 died.
right,
And I mean, for something, and these are things that can't be orchestrated. Like somebody didn't go in there and just rapidly decay that bridge
mm-hmm.
and somehow have it set up to where it was gonna come down on November 15th.
Exactly, and kill the same amount of people that it basically said it
Yeah,
was. Yeah, there's
and
that's
A lot of these things also stick to a very close timeline together too. They stick within about a year of the first sighting
Mm-hmm.
to the bridge, and then it is gone.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been reports of the Mothman today, but those have all been just dismissed as speculation, people making up stories. As
Right.
far as what the authorities of this town in West Virginia and Point Pleasant, they say that as far as credible evidence of the Mothman, it stopped on December 15th in 1967, right after the bridge collapse. They
Huh.
never heard from him again.
Huh.
But from then, all from, see, from November 12th of 1966
Mm-hmm.
to December 15th of 1967,
Mm-hmm.
Johnson would go on to say he would receive in the hundreds upon hundreds of phone calls addressing the existence of the Mothman.
Right.
And just as fast as the phone calls came in, they stopped.
Huh.
It was just like he says in his own thing right here. It says Johnson would go on to say that the Mothman to him was almost like flipping a switch into craziness.
Wow.
1 minute you flip the switch and everybody's talking about otherworldly voices and creatures hunting them through the night. And just the same, like a light switch going off, it disappeared.
Yeah.
And that's something to me is a little paranormal in its own too. Like usually, if it was a whole made up thing that the people were in on it, they would keep the story going throughout time to
Right.
keep it alive and keep people interested. But it just stopped,
Right.
and that's what gives the credibility to me to it a little bit. Is that just like if something once it finished its business, it left.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the story of the Mothman.
Well, like I said, something definitely did happen there, but as for what the Mothman is really supposed to be, right, that's something we never will know.
No, no. It, I think it's one of those things that's better off that we don't know too.
Well, yeah.
I think this world already thinks it's too. This whole world thinks they're too big for their own britches, and everybody wants to know the truth about everything. And kind of like how Jack Nicholson said at the end of A Few Good Men, sometimes you just can't handle the truth.
Yeah.
Sometimes the truth is just too dark, too disturbing, and sometimes, frankly, too bloody for the world to know about.
Agreed.
I mean, people, I mean, literally, people lose their minds over little bitty things. You imagine them coming out and saying that there is a Mothman or there is werewolves or man and gals with
Mm.
working with chupacabras coming after people.
Yeah.
And what we're going to do, man? There's nothing you can do. You get on the ground, the chupacabras chase you. You get in the plane, now you got the man and gals. You just can't win. Well, yeah, I had to say that chupacabra part, especially for you, because I knew you would enjoy that.
Oh yeah, I got a kick out of that
The chupacabras and the manigals working together.
one.
It's not the first time though I've heard stuff like that. Like I've heard like there's a lot of Bigfoots, like different species of Bigfoots and stuff,
Yeah, I heard that too.
and one of them supposedly works with chupacabras.
God.
Yeah, it was like they're hunting dogs, and then another one. I don't know. This one's fucking crazy. But yeah, this one's pretty fucking crazy because I'm trying to say it. It just my mind's like, don't say that shit. That's stupid. But apparently, there's this Bigfoot out there called the Lightning Man.
The what? The Lightning Man?
Lightning Man, because he's a black Bigfoot that has like a strip of white going down his back.
Like a skunk.
kind of like a skunk Bigfoot. Besides, like they say that he's called the Lightning Man because he's known to like take trees and smash them against other trees, and in the distance it sounds like thunder.
Okay.
That's why he's called the Lightning Man.
Okay.
But the Lightning Man has a special codependency with another being as well. You want to take a guess what this being is?
I have absolutely no idea.
It's the ghost of a Cherokee girl.
What?
Yeah, some Cherokee girl, like the Bigfoot will stalk something and force whatever it's hunting. Like,
Yeah.
say, for example, that there's a hunter out there in the woods and like two of them out there by themselves. This lightning man will stalk the two hunters and force them in a direction to where they'll find this old cabin.
Okay.
And then they'll go into the cabin for cover from the Bigfoot stalking them,
Right.
and that's where the little old Cherokee girl gets them.
So she gets him and kills him?
Yeah, like they're never seen from again.
I never heard that before, so that's new to me.
Yeah, so apparently there's all kinds of things that have codependent relationships. But I've never that I mean, how do you even like start a relationship with that? Like the Bigfoot walking along and see little ghost girl is like,
Well,
my girl, what up?
that could be like a Morbach monster type of thing, like how somebody was cursed, probably.
Mm-hmm. Probably, like like her husband or something, or father cursed and became the lightning man, and now she just follows him around.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's some dumb shit.
But
But yeah, so that was my monsters episode, guys.
good. That's a good one.
Figured we would stretch and get away from the aliens for a little while.
Yeah, yeah. I know, like I said before, I know we've been talking a lot about that, so we wanted to touch
Well,
on
there's
it
just
at
a
least.
lot's come up recently about aliens.
Oh, yeah, yeah. But
But yep. Now, I guess next week it will be you.
yes, it will. And we'll let everybody know what the topic is during the week. So we hope to see you all again next weekend.
All right, guys. Have a good night.
All right. Thank you all for coming in. Hope you all enjoyed. Have a good one. Again, I'm Nick, my co host Jason.
Bye bye, guys.
Have a good night, everybody.